couple of months ago, our dojo had an Aikido workshop with a very high-ranking sensei. I didn't even bother signing up. I knew I was out of my league. But I did sit and watch from the sidelines, and even that made me a little dizzy. Anyway, the guest taught this and taught that, and at a certain point he picked a senior student and demonstrated some elaborate move. The student threw himself to the ground, rolling away from the master, even though there was no contact. "I didn't touch you," said the master. "Why did you roll away?" And the student answered, "Because I knew that if I stayed where I was, I would be dead." An almost identical scene played out in another workshop I was in as a hostage negotiator. You might ask yourself, if it's almost identical, then why waste our time? Well, this story has the magic words hostage negotiation in it, and since these are the sexiest words I have in my resume, I'll be damned if I let this opportunity slip. So, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, our hostage negotiation team had a workshop with a world-renowned negotiator, a person who was actually a part of a couple of real-life hostage events. He was a very impressive, very patient person, and he answered the also-hasty Israeli barrage of questions as best he could, even when it was obvious that we were asking questions just to hear ourselves talk, as we often do. "So, what if I threaten the terrorist and he's not scared?" "Then you try pulling him with something he wants," answered the negotiator, rather than push him using fear, which is less effective. "But what if he is not asking for anything?" countered another impatient Israeli. "Not me, I assure you." "Then you slowly introduce something into the conversation, creating a common language until it becomes acceptable," said the negotiator. But he closes the windows, he is not picking the phone, and he executes a hostage every 10 minutes, shouted one of the guys, eager to show the negotiator he doesn't have all the answers. The negotiator nodded his head sagely and said, "Then strap your vest and check your gun and magazines, because what you describe here is not a negotiation. This is war." We'll said it before and we'll say it again. We are learning some fancy moves here. We have Aikido metaphors, we have metaphysical babble, we have intro and outro music, but sometimes we lose. As Aikidokas, as negotiators, we do our best and the conflict refuses to be resolved. Maybe it's our fault, maybe it's the conflict's fault. Try saying it's the other person's fault, that's always a good out. But having the right tools doesn't mean we can always fix it, make it non-violent, or even for that matter, survive the conflict, metaphorically or not. Why am I saying this right now when we just started talking about concrete tools? Because I am the Aikidiot, and salesmanship is my middle name. The Aikidiot, Aikido, conflict resolution, and the general practice of not being a jerk. Chapter 10, Situating, Part 2. Remember that delightful driver that almost ran us over and then had the nerve to yell at us? We never said what's to be done with her. We gave our usual sanctimonious speech about what not to do. We're really good at that, it seems. But what do you say to someone who obviously doesn't give a damn? So, here we are, standing in the middle of the crosswalk, heart pounding from fear and anger. The driver is hanging out of her car's window, shaking her fist and calling us idiots. Now what? Now we situate. But where does it start from? There's a world of facts around us. Which one do we choose? One method we have already demonstrated is to simply describe the situation. It's a bit on the primitive side, but hey, you know how the saying goes. When life gives you lemons, you use them to beat the other person into a pulp. Then you can complain to life that lemons are not elegant enough to carry into a fight. Anyway, a dry, neutral description of the situation can be a good opening point. "Ma'am, I was crossing here and you almost hit me, is not bad under pressure. Where do we go from there is a good question, but it is more or less a safe gambit. The driver can say it's your fault, but she can't deny that she almost hit you. Oh yeah? Excuse you, Mr. Ikidiot, but people today can deny whatever they want. Any sense of shame or indeed a sense of wrong and right is gone. Regretfully, I have to agree, but lying, let's not call it any other name, has its prices. For example, we say, "Ma'am, you nearly hit me," and that horrible, horrible creature behind the wheel goes, "Bullshit, I wasn't anywhere near you." Now, just saying this makes me want to find that driver, even though she doesn't really exist, catch her from the lapels of her ugly designer jacket, and shake her until she admits that no, it's your fault. You didn't stop at the stop sign. You're a rude, mean person, not me. You're lying. Admit it. Seriously, I find it that infuriating. But why, actually? Let's go back for a moment. The driver is at fault. That much from our point of view is obvious. She did nearly hit us. But if she weren't such a nasty piece of work about it, we would probably let it go. If she had run out of the car trembling and apologizing, we would probably try to be nice about it. After all, no harm was done. But once she opened her mouth and started insulting us, it all of a sudden became our life's mission to make her admit it was her fault. And the benefit of that is absolute zero.
Not necessarily, I have to say. You can do what my Uncle Harvey used to do. Throw yourself on the road, get a lawyer, and spend the next 10 years pretending to be disabled. That's not a bad idea.
Sure. But if that's not your style, then really, it doesn't matter whether the driver owns up or not. But you can still feel the blood pounding in your ears, and your artificial interpretation of the situation is telling you that this is a fight for life or death. But no, the fight for life or death was a moment ago. You against the car. And you can't say you won, but you didn't lose either. And that battle is gone. Nothing will change its outcome. But as usual, let's choose the path more traveled and get back to the argument. We chose a very minimal, obvious statement for our situating, and the driver, super combative and eager to negate every word we say, dug herself a hole. If there was no danger, why did she break and start yelling all of a sudden? She had no reason to fight with us to begin with. And that may give us a heart attack because all we want at this point is to win. But trust me, there is no winning in such a situation. In fact, like we said before, there isn't really a conflict other than the made-up one the driver insisted on having. So, what happened when we made the very small, precise, factual statement? The most important thing is that we haven't given the other any fuel for conflict. We suggested a starting point to the interaction that does not apportion guilt, that does not pin to the common space anything that wasn't there before. The driver can reject it, making a complete idiot out of herself, and she can accept it by responding concretely. She may very well choose to fly off the handle once again, but we just made that a tiny little bit less obvious. Where would we go from that point? Not far, I'm afraid. Maybe we can persuade the driver to stop yelling. Maybe if we spend the better part of the day at that intersection, we might get her to show some sympathy. But get her to admit, give us a victory? I know a couple of grandmasters who could make that happen, and it is very impressive to watch, but Aikidoing, it is not. As far as Aikidoing is concerned, we just met our opponent, made clear that a shouting match will not happen, and that we can safely turn our back on them and walk away, feeling the bile rising in our throat and swearing to never, ever listen to podcasts again.
So this is why we started with that pointless negotiation story. To make them swallow the pill and say thank you. Oh, that was crafty. Letting them think that losing like a losery loser is actually cool. Nice. We might make a corporate man out of you yet.
Oh, if only.
So, you know what? Let's make it a bit more interesting for me. A friend of mine who's designing weapons of mass destruction as a side gig, she was approached by this evil billionaire, and he asked her to design for him some mega weapon of doom so he'll be able to control the world. Naturally, she agreed, and a month later, she delivers him this slick piece of tech, upon which Daddy Big Bucks says he'll pay only half of what was agreed. I told her, screw the community guidelines. You should hack him into oblivion. But let's see what you have to say. What kind of a benign, neutral, situating statement should she deliver? If nothing else, it'll be amusing.
So she thinks that half the price is an unacceptable offer, but we can easily see that's not neutral or factual, right?
Okay, I'll humor you. Let's say that.
Why? Why is it unacceptable?
Because that snooty idiot can't just decide whatever he wants.
But he just did, so saying he can't isn't factual. It's just an opinion. Why is that unacceptable?
Because she put her heart and soul into it, and she deserves to be compensated for designing such a lovely doomsday weapon.
Why? Why does she deserve to be compensated?
Her time is worth money, bucko. She has bills to pay, loans to return, electricity, storage, CPUs. And yes, she deserves to turn a little profit.
Profit? Why do you need to profit?
Because innovation takes resources. You need to experiment. You need to make mistakes. And then a lot of money goes down the drain. If you don't have the cash to support this, you can't create cutting-edge technology.
Great. Now say it. All of it.
Look, Mr. Billionaire, I have bills to pay, loans to return, expenses. But more importantly, I need to innovate for you. And innovation takes resources. You need to experiment, you need to make mistakes, and a lot of money goes down the drain. If you don't have the cash to support this, you can't create cutting-edge technology. Oh, that was both factual and professional. It's as if somebody wrote a script for me to demonstrate how a factual situating statement can do wonders. Wow.
I don't know what you're talking about, but yes. The first thing that comes to our mind in a conflict is subjective. It's our opinion about how things should be. This is stupid. I don't accept this. Go swim with the sharks, and so on. But our opinions are usually anchored in some real-world facts or phenomena. And if we ask ourselves why we think what we think, we can go back to the source of our opinions. And if we go back enough, we will eventually get to facts. Not necessarily scientifical, proven facts, not legal facts mostly, but some common sense we and our opponent can agree upon. That would be situating, establishing our respective positions without making contact. Like we said repeatedly in the previous episode, situating is just the first stage before we absorb and redirect. But even in the two examples we've given here, it's pretty clear that choosing our situating correctly can already make us some headway. Give the other a hint of what we're trying to say, which is a good sign. It means that our subjective opinion is closely related to the facts of the situation. If our situating statement doesn't even smell like what we want to say in the end, it might need some polishing. In Aikido terms, a good situating would probably be a position of readiness and effective movement into the contact. A bad situating statement would be a combative, static stance, probably facing in the wrong direction. You will possibly be doing excellent Aikido at that point, just not with your attacker. One last example, an open one, before we let Monica put some order in today's mess, And this one, too, will be from the world of hostage negotiation. I'm happy to say I never had the opportunity to find out, but what do you tell a person who has just executed a hostage? What kind of situating would you use to even start connecting with such a person? You can't say anything like, killing is wrong, or you will pay for this, because the other doesn't see it that way. Killing a hostage was for them an act of heroism, and no, they have no intention of paying since they are not planning on coming out alive of the situation. You can't say, you murdered a hostage, because for the other person, this civilian was considered an enemy soldier, and killing them was simply part of a battle. So, what do we say? I have some suggestions, but telling you any of them is great? No, not really. Because, like I said, I am the Aikidiot, and salesmanship is my middle name.
Okay, fighting Aikidokas. Today we gave more examples of situating, and maybe, if we stayed awake, we learned 2 important methods for situating. First, when in doubt, describe the situation. Simply narrate what happened. It might come out a little bland, but we'll do a moderately good job, especially in tight, volatile situations. The second method is looking backward, asking ourselves why repeatedly until we get from our initial subjective opinion to some facts or common sense our opponent can accept. To help you with remembering these 2 methods, our skill acquisition team came up with the acronym MALFUNCTION, which stands for Minimal Assault, Literal Fact, Undulating Next, Common, Tentative, Intuition, or Not. You can try to learn this acronym and might even find it useful, but for better results, just use your head and try to remember. And if you feel like it, visit theaikidiot.com and look at some illustrations. We're nice that way. Next on the agenda, absorbing. And may the odds ever be in my favor.